and I am popping in today for a real smorgasbord of things, and I am wanting to go through everything quickly, but I never seem to be able to do that, even with the best intentions. So it remains to be seen if this will end up just being one video or if I'll break it up into multiple bits. For starters, apologies if anyone's being blinded by my forehead. As you can see, my tarot table is behind me, and in past videos, whenever I do the top down at the tarot table, I'm always apologizing for the glare, especially in the summertime where we have such long daylight hours, because there's the culprit right there. It's not a ring light causing issues. It's sometimes a ring light's causing issues, but more often than not, it's the skylight, and there is an identical one over my head. But yeah, so what do I even want to get started with right now? Well, first of all, I am going to be taking a bit of a hiatus from posting videos in August because I am about to return stateside and check in on my mama and pick up where I left off in helping out with family duty, as it calls. And so, just to kind of squeeze this in before I go, one thing I wanted to do was give a heads up on what my August decks will be, and also just kind of do an update on my deck culling. One of my first videos on tarot that I posted at this channel was a culling of my tarot and oracle collection, and a lot of those decks that I showed, I still have, and I have since added some to the mix. Well, on that topic, first of all, applause to Dawn Michelle for her recent video on deck collection not being a dirty word. That was such a breath of fresh air, because I just kind of realized over the course of this year already that it's not, like when I'm calling, it's not so much to get the number down. I feel like I am just always going to have a lot of decks, because as much as I would love to just have the one and get one really well-worn deck that I'm just so bonded with, that is such a lovely idea, but every time I try to do that and really just sit with one deck for a while, I just feel like, oh, but this time of year makes me really want this kind of atmosphere in the artwork. And, oh, but this deck is really good for this type of readings, and I just would really miss its voice. So I do second what she says, where I think that it's not a bad thing at all to have them, and I don't think it's a bad thing to leave some unused for a time. At least for me, as long as I know that at some point I will use them. It's one thing if it's decks that I just know I probably won't, and so the ones that I'll quickly show today fall in that category. A blanket statement I could make for all of them is great deck, love them, but just not using it. And moreover, I don't think I will ever use them, where there are others where I know I might put them away for a season. I might even put them away for a year. But I know that I still really love them and enjoy them. And if I'm putting them aside, it's really just to give more attention to a lesser amount of decks throughout the year, just so that I can be using each one for a longer period of time and playing around more with different combinations and pairings. Because as you can see, and as I've shared in previous videos, I usually do have a few decks set out on my tarot table at a time. There are some that I'm aware I might have brought out last summer, say, as like my seasonal summer deck, and I realize they're kind of going to the wayside this year, and I don't know if I'm going to pull them out before the season's over and I'm going to be wanting to get into my autumnal decks. But I feel okay with that, because I know it doesn't mean I'm never going to use them again. Like, I absolutely will. See you next year, lovelies. So that's just kind of where I'm at. It's just sort of like this more inflow, outflow flow that I'm in. And it's probably keeping the size of my collection status quo, but it's making me more discerning about what is in that collection, and just making sure that every deck there, it's not one that I just got it to get it, that I really do love it for some reason or other and absolutely intend to use it. And yeah, I do have a couple of decks too that I feel like I got more as a matter of collecting, but I do intend to use them at some point. But I know that they won't be decks that'll probably be go-tos or in any sort of regular rotation. They could very well just be decks that sit on my shelf and that I'll take down every now and then to look through and appreciate. I didn't think to grab them, but the three that are coming to my mind straight away are the Alleyman's Tarot, Spirit Keeper's Tarot, the Revelation edition, and Tarot Volatile. I can see using all of those in the future. I just have kind of tucked them away right now, though, for when I feel ready to properly sit with them. Spirit Keeper's Tarot, I want to use as a learning tool and go through it while going through Bennabelle Wen's accompanying book, which is massive. And I am very eager to read it and learn all of the symbolism that goes in, because I just know that that's really going to inform my practice for other decks that I use too. And so even if that deck doesn't become one that I want to sit and do readings with, I just feel there's so much to learn from it. And so I've got that just kind of waiting in the wings for when I feel ready to do that intensive study. Tarot Volatile is kind of the same. There's a lot of imagery in there, and so I feel like it's another study type of deck to really sit with. And I'm just not feeling at this point that's something I'm wanting to undertake, and I'm, for whatever reason, not feeling like even sitting and just playing around with it and doing readings with it in the meantime, because of course I can still read with it. I don't have to understand every single visual that's appearing there to be able to use it, but I have plenty of other decks to do that with. So those two, again, those are just kind of waiting in the wings. And then the Alleyman's Tarot, which I've talked about before, I have just not been in the mood really to play with it and its approach with all different cards from different artists and decks, and a lot of cards being created specifically for this deck. So yeah. I just kind of got occupied elsewhere, and that's where it's at with those. All that being said, though, I like these decks. You know, I have looked at them and I know I can learn a lot from them, and I'm okay having them collecting dust on my shelf for a while. If they end up just being part of a collection, I think that's okay, because I think that they each respectively have a particular contribution to tarot that they make. And as an enthusiast, I feel like possessing them is an homage to this practice of mine, whether I use them or not. But I do want to keep decks like that to a minimum and have the vast majority, something that I'm actually working with. As far as the ones that I'm not, I am going to be sending off some decks to people soon, actually. I have a friend in the States that has requested the Pre-Raphaelite Tarot, which I shared in my culling video. And she's also going to be taking one that I had not yet shared. This is a very recent Declutter, and it is probably the most astonishing one to myself. I am actually floored that I'm giving this one away, but I'm at absolute peace with it. I don't know what happened, but I don't think I'm going to use this deck again. And I should love everything about it. And I did love everything about it, and I did use it a lot. But I don't even need to place it into Purgatory. I just know it's time. Dark Mansion Tarot, which, again, I should love everything about it. You know, Victorian Gothic is my jam, and this very much has that very Tim Burton-y artwork. There's so much character to all the faces in here, and gosh, so much detail. I mean, look at how intricate everything is, and it's wonderful. I mean, There are cards in here I just absolutely love. It's great, and it's great for readings. I found it very easy to read with, and I actually like to use this a lot when I actually did do readings for other people, which is not a common occurrence, but every now and then if I do it for friends or family, I got a kick out of pulling this one out, and they enjoyed it as well. So, I mean, I've got nothing negative to say about the deck. It's just time. Wasn't using it. I don't want it competing anymore with my other October decks, the ones I like to bring out as early as September, just entering into the fall season and getting into the Halloween mood. That's pretty much when I would pull it out. And yeah. So I'm so excited to know that, like, my friend's so excited to have this deck, and just to know that it's got another home, I'm at such peace with that. And unbeknownst to her, but another friend of mine in the States is going to be receiving the Threadbound Oracle. This is also a recent declutter. My friend's a librarian, so I think she will especially appreciate the bookishness of this deck, and I ended up edging mine in yellow, which is really fun. But I honestly think that's like the main thing that makes me reluctant to give it up, is because I'm so excited about that edging. And oh, the cardstock, it's a really nice linen. And it's not like a super slippery linen, because sometimes linen cardstock, it's my favorite type of cardstock, but it can get real, whew, where the cards just fly. This, though, has a bit of like grip to it somehow. I don't know how to describe it. I'm not a cardstock aficionado, but anyway, it just makes for really nice, like, matte images that can survive any glare my Skylit wants to throw at it. And the vibrancy of the color, like, this is just really fun and beautiful artwork. And I like how, as an oracle deck, it has a tarot-like system. I forget, it has suits. And because it's all based on bookmaking, there's like the suit of thread, the suit of ink, paper, and that's it. I think it's just those three suits, and then you've got minors within those suits, and then you have the equivalent of the major arcana with cards like the healer, the library, the protagonist, and then even better, there's keywords with each one. So even without the little guidebook that's provided, just nice little, which has great descriptions in here and good questions for self-inquiry. Even without that, though, with these keywords, that it helps you just intuitively expand on meanings with your own interpretations. And so, I don't know, it's cool. And now that I'm flipping through it, I'm like, I don't really want to give it up. I just find I haven't really been using it, like, ever. I've pulled it out a couple of times in maybe a couple of years. So, I don't know. You know what I really love to pair this with, though, is the This Might Hurt. I don't know. As I always say, different art styles, but they just kind of complement each other. They're both very contemporary. They have very vibrant colors. But I have This Might Hurt in Purgatory right now because, again, I'm also just not using it. I don't know. I just feel like I have these other contemporary decks that it competes with. And so then I end up, you know, not using any of them very much. And I would just like to minimize that so that I can give other decks more love. And I just found that this particular one, I did use it a lot to read for other people more than I was wanting to reach for it for myself. And I don't know why that is. It has amazing cardstock. It's such a dream to shuffle. I love Isabella Rotman's art, not least because she is also one of the artists who will design merch for Buffering the Vampire Slayer, my favorite Buffy podcast. But yeah, I don't know. So I've just got that sitting out, and if I do decide to pass it on, I actually do have someone in mind to pass it on to. So I'll keep thinking on this. I'm going to bring it with me to the States, and I can always change my mind. But I think that my friend who does not have a large collection at all, I think that she would really love this. And yeah. So in the UK here then, I've got a taker for a whole stack of decks, a lot of them from my original call from earlier in the year. My mini steampunk, maybe Lenormand, Rackham Tarot, John Bauer Tarot, Ancient Italian Tarot, and saltwater reading cards. All been adopted by a lovely lady here in the UK. And the reason why I'm passing all of those on, I explained in those last videos, which I will link in the description. But then she's also taking 2 additional decks that I have recently added. And it's the same as with the Dark Mansion, where I'm like, I can't believe I'm rehoming these. I can't believe I'm rehoming these. Speaking of Tim Burton, Nightmare Before Christmas, this deck is so cute. I echo a lot of others in the disappointment that there are so many pips, and it's no offense against pip decks. I just prefer my minors to be illustrated. It's just my personal preference. And I don't even mind how these were done. Like, I enjoy the candelabras, you know, and the candles. And there's sewing needles for the swords. I can appreciate that. And how the quartz and the majors, the choices for those were all very clever. Oh, and this one I edged in purple, which again, I find very fun. It makes me kind of sad to give it up. But I'm very glad that the new adoptive parent of this deck is excited about the purple. I told her, like, oh, you could always go over it in black if you don't like that, but she loves it. So there we go. But I mean, it's just so cute. But it's like one of those things where I do love this movie, so I'll just watch the movie. I don't think I'm a big enough of a fangirl to need to have a deck for it. When the topic of fandom decks comes up in the tarot sphere, every time I just think the only fandom deck I really want and need is a Buffy the Vampire Slayer deck. And yeah, I'm already prepared to be disappointed in the Insight Editions one that's going to come out in the next year. I know it's going to be pips, and I don't know. I don't even know if I can trust them to make good choices for the other cards, but I don't know. Like I said, A Nightmare Before Christmas, I did like the selections there. So I'm keeping my expectations low, but I'm still remaining hopeful that it might surprise me. And for lack of anything else out there, it is one that, you know, as much as I said before, oh, I don't want to collect too many decks just to have them. I mean, I would make an exception for that, because honestly, where fandom goes, that is the only fandom that I go absolutely gaga for and would make a superfluous purchase for, even if I never used the deck to actually read tarot. I'm absolutely buying it. So yeah, so that's just where I felt like with Nightmare Before Christmas. And again, I've got other decks that I like to use around Halloween. And originally, this was also serving as a Christmas deck, because I couldn't really find a Christmas deck out there that I liked, but I have since acquired one. But another video for another day. Holiday decks I think would be fun to do at some point. So the next one that I am giving away is the Black Lily Tarot. And I just had this on my tarot table a few months ago, and I love pairing it with the Yonasa Yaos deck. It looks really cool with the Reclaim Oracle as well. But I wanted to love this deck more than I ultimately did. I wanted this deck to be the one that makes me uncomfortable and makes me face very uncomfortable truths. And it does make me feel uncomfortable, that's for sure. But I also just feel like I don't understand it on some level. And I don't know how to explain that. It's like I understand what's in the cards. I do understand what they mean, but there's just, I have to stare too long at them and think about it too long. And not to be lazy, like I don't want to be thinking, but I don't get like an intuitive hit straight away. And I guess if I'm honest, images like this, like every time I see this, I'm like, is the bear touching her boob? Like, what? I don't understand. I don't know. Someone please explain to me. Every time I look at this though, whatever other interpretation I could come up with, I just think she's getting fondled by this bear. Am I being thoroughly ignorant? Probably. I do think I was holding on to it because a couple of my beloved tarot tubers out there love it so much, but it's that other concept that's been floated around in the community recently, like the fantasy self. I think my fantasy self wants to pretend that I'm cool and deep enough to get that deck, and I just don't. So again, was really excited that my friend expressed interest. So I mentioned before that This Might Hurt is in my Purgatory, and also sitting with it, which I must say coordinates really well. Something with the black boxes with the gold, which I love. Golden Thread Tarot, which also has Golden Thread Lenormand. So if I do rehome these, I'm going to be looking for someone who also is into Lenormand and would take them as a set. I do not want to separate them. I will keep them before I separate them. This one's really neat. First of all, this is the only deck in my collection that's made out of recycled plastic. So these cards are really flexible. They riffle shuffle really well. I guess the only concern is that you do have this like metallic embossing there. And, I do worry about that getting like scratched and scraped off from a lot of use. But it's really cute, like simple imagery. This was an early deck for me, and it was really helpful because I believe the creator at Labyrinthos had initially designed these cards as a project for just familiarizing themselves with the tarot, and then ended up just making an actual deck out of it. So I think that it was the process of someone else's study that went into how these images were created, makes it very helpful as a beginner deck. You're not getting any color to read into, of course, but just for having those basic images there, they do very clearly convey the card they're supposed to be. It's cool. I'll jump forward to some minors. And it's the only deck I have that's like this too, with like the black and the gold. The only other kind like that I've considered is the Marigold Tarot. But yeah, this is a neat deck. I mean, and look at that flexibility. I'm holding the whole deck here, and it is just so easy to bend, and it just, springs right back. And the Lenormand comes in a little clamshell box. But then same recycled plastic. Really great to just have these simple images, especially when it comes to Lenormand, but it's not really the image that matters. So they're just cool. And again, as I go through this, I'm like, I don't know. This was actually, I was thinking about it after watching Dawn Michelle's video on deck collection, and it did make me think, like, you know what? Maybe I will pull that one back out because I just like it. I'm not using it really anymore, but I still just like it. I don't know. Does that mean I have to get rid of it? I don't know. And I couldn't tell you what the difference is between that and these other ones where I'm like, oh, I loved these and I used them, but I'm just like, yeah, I'm over it. I don't know. I could not say what makes me still feel like I'd want to hold on to this even if I knew I was never going to use it again. Why I would want to hold on to it, where these other ones I'm just like, nah, I'm good, they can go. Could not tell you. So I will stop going on at length about this. Geez, I do have to pick up the pace here because other new additions are still sitting beside me. Only a couple of new ones. Starseed Oracle. I don't know if I can get any takers for this one, possibly. I did some really ugly edging on it though, using a distress ink that is approaching the end and probably just needs to be disposed of at this point. I think I used Vintage Rose to give it like a pink, but you can see where it just didn't even come off on any of the edges, and so it's all just very uneven. But I mean, it does give it like a dirty pink distressed look, so it's not the worst. It's just that I don't know if anyone else would want to deal with it. But speaking of Dawn Michelle, I got this because I already had Rebecca Campbell's Work Your Light Oracle with the artwork by Danielle Noel. When I saw Dawn Michelle do a video a while back on how she had merged her Work Your Light deck with the Starseed Oracle, it's like, oh, that's cool. It just looked so neat, like being able to combine these two decks, and not just that, but like curating, going through and eliminating redundancies, but then also having like enough cards to pick from that you wouldn't have to feel bad pulling some out that don't resonate. And you could really cultivate it to like what works best for you. And it just happened to turn out too that when I was going through and really thoughtfully curating what cards I wanted to keep in the final deck, I ended up pulling an even amount out of both decks. So I ended up with like 35 from each deck, which made it perfectly 50-50 going into a nice big chunky Oracle deck of 70 cards. And I just thought, oh, this is excellent. And I'm going to get so much more out of this now. And this deck just doesn't like me, or like, maybe it's okay with me, but it doesn't want to work with me. It doesn't want to work with me. Because like I said, 50-50, half the cards were from this deck, exactly half from the other. Doesn't that mean a 50% probability of choosing one or the other every time I shuffle? And dozens of times shuffling the crap out of this deck, this combined deck, and pulling, these cards just did not surface for me. Out of all of those times, I can only think of once or twice that a card from the Starseed Oracle came up, and all the other times it was from the Work Your Light. So I thought, or just realized, this isn't for me. It's not wanting to speak to me. And so, okay, you know, I plucked them all out. So now this deck is intact and on its own and back in its cool futuristic box. So yeah, bon voyage to that one. This one I shared very, very early on as one of my early in the year acquisitions, just when I was declaring it a depth year, and I ended up having a little duck haul, the Hour Tarot. And I kind of suspected this was going to be the case. The cards, I did actually, admittedly, make them smaller. There was this border that went all the way around, and I cut the side border off just to bring these out, because otherwise there was really thick white borders on the other side. It just absolutely shrinks these pictures. And I guess I'm not going to flip through because I did do that in that earlier video, but I just didn't understand. Like, you have this beautiful collage art featuring these prominent women in history, And I mean, it's no offense to the creator, because I think this was independently published as a larger size, and it's the publisher that decided to make it so teeny tiny. And I just don't get it, because it comes in this huge box, huge guidebook, which is great. Why couldn't they make the cards bigger? So yeah, again, I don't know if anyone would be interested in this one, because in trimming it down, if the name of the woman portrayed was long enough, it got cut off. And yeah, the thing too is, I don't know if I would give it away, just because I kind of want to hold on to this guidebook. I could use it in a bibliomantic way, instead of shuffling these teeny tiny cards. Just, you know, flip and stop on a page and see who it stops on. But you see where, like, you get these full color images at a much nicer dimension for appreciating all that went into them. And there's so many women in here, I don't know their histories, and I would like to learn them. So I think I'm gonna, I mean, unless anyone really, really, really wanted my little trimmed deck. It's a deck that requires the guidebook, I feel. As beautiful as the artwork is, if I did not recognize who the woman was, I just didn't know what I was meant to draw from that. And of course, you could just take from the traditional tarot titles and go with traditional meanings. But I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is, like, I would like to keep the book. I would like to read this book, whether I use it for bibliomancy or I just use it as a resource, learning about wonderful women who made contributions to the world. So I don't know what that means for the deck then. Honestly, it might just get recycled, but if anyone would be interested in just the deck, it's yours. But I don't know. So this is just going to kind of sit in my purgatory too, and I guess I'll decide if I officially am not going to be using that. At least keeping the book. If I felt so compelled, though, by anyone's interest, then perhaps I would combine it and give the full set away. But yeah, for right now, I would like to keep the book. Sun's going out, so I'm starting to illuminate like a being in the movie Cocoon. Okay, it has officially gotten too sunny for me to continue recording here, so I'm just going to sign off now. I'm going to be back in another location and another video for preview of my August decks, okay? Bye.